Is Diablo 4 saved? Is the game good now? Did they fix Diablo 4? Is Blizzard finally listening?
Okay, Diablo 4 Season 4. Is it fun? What do I think about it? It's been out for about 48 hours now. I've been playing it for about 28 hours worth of gameplay. This is character number 2 because the first one died. So let's talk about my experience. The very first part people are going to want to know is the itemization. It's literally called Loot Reborn because it's focusing on the items. They have the tempering, they have the masterworking in it. How does this feel? First thing to talk about is the affixes. They have removed a bunch of the annoying affixes and replaced them with common affixes. So now, more or less, almost every piece of gear you see is going to be like your main stat, max life, percentage damage, or resistances, life per second if it's a defensive item. They're going to repeat the same stats. Look at willpower, life per second. Okay, willpower, max life, life on hit. Willpower, life on hit, vulnerable damage. Willpower, maximum life damage percentage. Willpower, maximum life armor. You're going to see a lot of the same stats now. Does this feel
easier
better
to roll
than seeing
items?
a lot?
It's definitely a lot easier to roll items now.
The really weird long name stats? Yes, actually it does. For the most bit, I just want stats that I know are going to be good anyway, so it removes me farming through and destroying items that are basically just garbage, and most items tend to be usable. Since there's only 3 stats now, and you can enchant one of them, the odds are 2 of those 3 stats are probably going to be pretty good because there's not really that many affixes. What about the tempering? Well, the way this works is you have with an ancestor item at the end, and that's all that really matters, because let's be honest, leveling is super fast now. You're going to get to ancestral gear
leveling is
very
crazy fast.
As soon as level 55, and you can also basically beat the capstone to level 55 anyway to get into World Tier 4, because the dungeon bosses for the capstone, at least right now, are kind of a joke. You can walk through them.
They're not tuned properly. Like, you shouldn't be able to go at like level 30 and beat the level 50 boss without any degree of like real skill or planning. That's not the way the game should work. Like, obviously, it's like, yeah, left 30, why not? Because it doesn't make sense. That's the reason. It doesn't make sense that you could just go and do that. It's a game for dads? I guess so.
Your power is so inflated. So you can get to tempering 2 affixes on an ancestor item, 1 on a sacred and standard item. And how does this work? Well, you can only pick certain 2 recipes. For instance, if you are a glove, you can do offensive utility. If you're boots, you can do mobility utility. If you're a defensive item, it's defensive utility. And if you're a weapon, it's offensive and weapons, for instance. You can re-temper an item. So let's say I wanted to put on like a storm.
It's like re-rolling gear.
All right, and I didn't get the one I want. I got wind shear projectile.
It's the power creep? Yeah, it's a massive amount of power creep. I think that's really the big issue. It's the power creep more than anything else. If the game gets difficult in the end game, yeah, I mean, it definitely does. I think that's fair, but I just don't think that, like, logically you shouldn't be able to go, like, I don't know any game, really, where, like, this is the norm, where you can just beat monsters that are, like, 20 levels higher than you at like level 30.
I still want that one, so I can re-roll it and try to get a different one. You get the one I want. Chance for Wind Spear again. You can re-roll the same one. Didn't want that one. Re-roll it again, and this time I get again Wind Spear. Okay, so we go one more time, and this time I got Wind Shear one more time. We're going to go again, and now we got Hurricane Duration.
There it is.
Let's say I like Hurricane Duration. So yes, it can be a little annoying because you can literally re-roll the same one over and over again, and you only get 5 temper re-rolls. But for the most bit, you can get a stat that you want on most of your items. This feels fine. Then you can add on your secondary stat. There you go. Tempering, Hurricane Damage. Now I have Hurricane Duration, Hurricane Damage. Tempering feels fine for the most bit.
Yeah, sure.
I do find myself mostly using and liking tempering to add on resistances. For instance, resistances actually work now, and with armor being 9,230 is the cap, getting your defensive layers are pretty easy. So you just put this in here, you go to defensive, you go to natural resistance. And
yeah, I think they made it pretty easy to get gear. Like, overall, they definitely did. I think they'll probably need to add in more stats to where people don't finish their entire gear set very fast. But the other issue is that what they really did is they just moved the difficulty and the complexity from, like, getting the gear and, like, being able to reforge it. And now the difficulty is at masterworking the gear and getting the elevated affixes. So it's like for casual players, it's not as big of a deal.
add on your resistance you want. It's going to roll up to 50%. That paired with the fact that you can go to enchanting, and if you really need resistances, you can put on a pair of these here, go to enchant item, and re-roll this. And then
and you can still enchant and do all that stuff anyway.
So now you can get resistances pretty quickly. AKA, getting the defenses you need is pretty fast to do. Tempering's also got some pretty cool stats, like Hurricane Duration's an interesting one, because I can just keep my Hurricane up for longer, or Hurricane Size, for instance, but, you know, chance for Tornado projectiles to cast twice, considering I'm using the Werewolf Tornado build, is actually
pretty
really
good. Yeah.
So some of these are actually like kind of crazy, and flat damage is even better than it ever used to be. They buff flat damage in the game, and you can see there's actually like chance to deal flat damage on this one too.
Sure.
Some of these are actually really crazy with the utility. Like a lot of your items are going to have utility on them, because for instance these defensive items can only have defense and utility, and that's only 2 of them, and you can have 2.
Yeah, I'm glad that they gave you the option to always add utility onto pieces of gear, because I feel like usually people don't go with utility unless they have to. But utility usually makes the game more interesting. So I think that the way they've added the tempering affixes is definitely a good solution.
Anyway, so you're going to have a utility, and one of the utilities on these is either like thorns, crowd duration, etc. Wolves attack speed.
Yeah, these are
these
cool.
ones are cool. Worldly Fortune. You have a chance to slow, immobilize, stun, or freeze enemies. And you can have this stacking on multiple of these, so you either have a chance to slow, immobilize, stun, or...
I think the lucky hit system is stupid, by the way. It doesn't make sense. It's like a secondary critical strike, effectively, but it doesn't do more damage. Like, I don't know. It's like, what is this?
Freeze them, and you can have one of each of them, meaning that if you have something that makes it where you do bonus damage based upon if they're crowd control, like I do here as a druid, you can actually use this as a way to sort of pseudo ramp your damage. So that's actually pretty cool. Masterworking's also pretty simple. You go in there, you get your 5% affix every time. You get that from just leveling up it, doing the pit over and over again, which is Greater Rifts, and blasting through Greater Rifts is actually pretty fun. We'll talk about the Greater Rifts here in just a second, or the pit as they're called in this game. Masterworking feels fine. This is where you're going to get your dopamine in an attempt to hit exactly the one you want, because there's now Greater affixes in the game, and the Greater affixes are your dopamine drops when you actually receive them. This is probably my favorite part of the itemization change, which is that the Greater affixes make it feel like when you get an item, you're like, you have that, oh shit moment, that one's got double Greater affix or whatever, and they can
He's right about this. The Greater affixes are good.
Somewhat pseudo rare, so this actually makes you feel like every now and then you're looking forward to looking at an item, like you're about to hover it over in your inventory, like, oh, what actually is it? Oh, it's damage Greater affix or what have you. So the items, to wrap up the item conversation, the items feel better than they did before. It is much less annoying is the way that I would say it, which is going to be a key word. They cut out a lot of like the annoying stuff in the game, which we'll talk about.
I think he's right about that, actually. Yeah, because like you used to always get affixes that are garbage and like stupid things like, oh, you deal more damage to frozen enemies or something like that. And yeah, he's definitely right. A lot of good changes. I think so too.
In a moment too. So itemization for me, yeah, that's a W. However, they did add one more annoying thing back into the game, which is that getting your sockets on your gear here is very hard to get.
It's very expensive.
These actually prism pieces, at least early in the game. Okay, I want to add a socket. Guess what? I got 2 of these things. So you can get them from World Boss, etc., but you have to be very careful about actually adding your sockets, because those materials are fairly rare. At least in my 28 hours, I've had a combined total between all my characters of acquiring 3 of these.
Wow.
So they simplified gems, but then made it like kind of hard to put the gems in the actual gear.
Yeah.
Not a big deal, but something I noticed. Also, extracting gear is way simpler now. You just salvage it to actually be able to extract. So if I just go like this...
Yeah, I think they've made a lot of actual W changes like this. Like, this has been great. Being able to just salvage the gear and not even think about it.
Click extract. Here, let me mark this so I don't extract that one. If I go like extract, you're going to see it's going to update my codex. And now my codex of power here
a huge W?
has been updated with whatever the highest tier roll of the gear I just added was. So this is a really good quality of life. This was done very, very well. And now, when you're either trying to actually extract gear, you can just do it through the salvage. And when you're actually trying to imprint gear, then it's a lot easier too, because you just go here and you click on Codex and you can like literally search for what you want. I immediately found myself using the Codex power change. So this was one of the best quality of life changes in the season.
And I think also it's a lot bigger than that, because that quality of life change made it to where you don't feel like you have to hold and like keep track of all these random items, because like all the stash space problems that people had, like nobody's talking about stash space anymore, because the only reason people had stash space as a problem was because of the codex. If it wasn't for the codex, nobody ever would have cared about stash space. So it's like if you add in both of those, like this solution, actually, it basically solved two problems at the same time.
Okay, enough about like the items. How does the game actually play? Well, if you're like everyone else that's playing the game right now, you're going to spend all of your time in the Hell Tide from about level 1 to 70, just leveling as fast as you can. That is because they have cranked, jacked the tits out of the amount of monsters that are available in the Hell Tide. So it is very fast experience. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, isn't this quite literally what we've been doing for 4 seasons, just killing monsters and leveling up? Weren't people saying the level 1 to 100 was kind of like a boring grind? And I would answer, yeah, you're right. Like basically this is more or less the same thing we've been doing, but now why are people enjoying it? It's because what happened was, one, they shrunk the grind, so it's not as long. But two is the gaps of time that you're spending that are making it annoying to do the grind have been shortened. So before, going from world tier 2 to 3 took a while, from 3 to 4 took a while.
Yeah.
But that grind is much, much faster. So the amount of like, okay, I need to get to X level and then I can do this thing has been shrunk down. So you're not getting as annoyed because you're kind of distracted from the fact that you're basically just grinding again. On top of it, the grind itself...
I think also the Hell Tides feel better because there's a lot of mob density. And you're AoEing down a bunch of monsters and it feels good. Like, the problem is that... And this is kind of like one of the issues where, like, Diablo 4 kind of falls off towards the end of the gameplay. Is that... Like, I feel like the long-form experience of playing a Diablo 4 season is much more short-lived than, let's say, PoE. I feel like whenever I hit, like, level 90 or so in PoE, I feel like the game opens up, whereas in Diablo 4, I feel like I'm doing a lot of the same activities in the game, just with a different name. So, like, if I go and I do the pit, that's basically like doing a nightmare dungeon. And if I go do a nightmare dungeon, that's basically like doing Hell Tides, right? Like, all of the gameplay is very, very similar. And I don't know if they can really fix that or not.
It's kind of fun, because it really was as simple as
proper
throw
bosses,
a fuckload of monsters at you, and actually fighting them is going to be more enjoyable. On top of it, they seem to have ramped the power of your characters through the fact that we're getting all these primary stats, etc. So you feel really strong while you're doing it. This has led some people to say that the season is incredibly easy. But my way of explaining this would
be... It's undeniably easy. Like, I think levels should be a benchmark of, like, how strong your character is. So, like, if you have a... Like, this is just, like, my own internal logic that, like, makes sense to me, is that, like, if you're level 30, you should be fighting other level 30 monsters, right? Now, there are exceptions. Like, if you're level 30 and you're, like, hyper geared out and your class is really good at this, maybe you can kill a 35 or a 40 monster. But, like, the fact that it is a normal mode of gameplay that you can clear a level 30 capstone, or a level 50 capstone dungeon at level 30, and the level 70 capstone dungeon at, like, barely level 50, maybe, this is just simply not the way the game was designed. Like, it doesn't make sense that you can do that. It's kind of a joke. Yeah, it's not logical at all. And, like, it would make sense that, like, the best player in the world could do that. It would make sense that somebody who's, like, really, like, got a twinked out character could do that. But as a norm, it doesn't make sense.
It gave it like a BBL. Like, basically, it sucked the fat out of the stomach of this and added it to the ass end of the game. So now the difficulty of the game is not in 1-to-1.
He's completely right. That's the best part. Like, this is the dumbest analogy I've ever heard. And he's completely right about it. This is perfect.
100, because that's where their audience retention was shrinking. People weren't getting level 100. They were quitting in like the 70s and the 80s and getting bored. So they thought, get everyone to level 100 and then add the grind at the ass of the game, which is basically the pits. The hardest content we've ever had in the game was AOZ 25, which is no longer in the game. But AOZ 25 is scaled equally to pit 150. The pit goes up to 200. Therefore, it scales higher than anything we've had before. However, your character does get stronger as well.
Yeah, I think you'll be able to clear that without too much trouble.
In order to activate the pit, you have to clear a Nightmare Dungeon here for these 6. So you still have to at least do 1 Nightmare Dungeon. I myself personally would rather just do the pit over the Nightmare Dungeon. However, right now I am in a Nightmare Dungeon, and the reason is because you still have to level your Paragon Glyph experience. For this reason, you're still going to need to farm your Nightmare Dungeons. So more than likely...
Yeah, having to... Like, I already did all that. I got all my things to, like, level 15. I didn't get them to level 21, though, or whatever the cap is. But, yeah, it's kind of annoying.
Your experience is going to be doing...
But they did make it faster. They made the Paragon Glyph experience, I think, 20% faster.
It's from, like, 1 to 70 if you're just trying to level as fast as possible, which is decently fun. And then you're going to be doing the Nightmare Dungeons from 70 to 100, which in my opinion is not very fun. But at the 100 plus, then you get to have fun again by doing the pits and then progressing towards basically Uber bosses, etc. That is at least if you're trying to be efficient in terms of power of your character. You're not required to stay towards this. And in fact, I would probably encourage you not to just sit there and grind over and over and over again in the Hell Tides. The amount of experience that you get in the game now has been ramped up, so you don't necessarily need to just stick to one thing. In fact, I probably wouldn't.
I would say even a casual player could hit level 100 in like a week or week and a half. Like at this point, like the leveling is so fast. I've only put 13 hours into my character, and I'm already almost like level 95 or something like that.
Because you need gold, for instance, which is going to come from Whispers, and the gold's going to be from masterworking later. You're going to need Obdicite, which you can get from the pit, so maybe grind to like till you can do tier 50 or so of the Nightmare Dungeon, then do some pit for a little bit, get to get the Obdicite for the masterworking. I would say try to mix up the variety a little bit, or else you run the risk of burning out.
Well, here's the problem that I have, right, is that doing the pit is basically like doing Nightmare Dungeons. What's really the difference between the pit and Nightmare Dungeons? You're killing the same mobs, doing the same thing. Like this is the and this is the problem that PoE solved. And like in Path of Exile, there are dramatically different modes of gameplay, but even in PoE this still is an issue, but it's much less of an issue.
Overall, the world's the most alive that I've seen it. The most amount of players in the game that I've seen in a while. I'm constantly running into people, and you run into them all the time because everyone's farming in the Helltide, and that's just an overworld piece. So I feel like I'm actually in the Diablo 4 overworld more than I am just getting stuck in the instances all the time.
Yeah,
it's
I think that's a good thing.
Better than the other seasons because the way the level in the other seasons was basically resetting dungeons,
100%.
Which was horrible. Or if you weren't doing that, then you were getting such slow experience that you were getting bored even trying to level up. So now they got us out of the dungeons, put us into the overworld, put a bunch of minions in front of us, and just said, okay, look, everyone's going to sit there and try the level anyway, so get through it, blast some minions in the Helltide. And then the bonus part about this is you're getting all kinds of materials, like boss materials, so you can slot in doing some bosses. The cinders are fairly generous now, so you're able to actually get legendary items, the consumables you need for like potion leveling, etc.
Yeah.
And you're able to get boss materials. They also drop you a ton of elixirs now as well in the game. So you're constantly able to have an elixir up, and you also have enough consumables to make incense as well. Then that plus the earn experience you get for the seasonal journey is enough to definitely keep you blasting through the levels.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the way that it's designed is actually pretty good now. Forced shared instance overworld is awful, though. Really? I actually like it. I like doing Helltides with other players. I think it's cool seeing other people out in the open world and like fighting against the mobs with them. Yeah, I mean, like I'm an MMO player, right? So like maybe that's just me, but yeah, I think it's really cool.
There's been a focus on like quality of life or things that will stop you from being annoyed. Like they're trying to remove annoying things. Like now you can actually use the horse and you can actually speed up the horse while it's in the town. This is something that when you're playing before, you're like, why can't I use my horse in town? And then you can use the horse in town. Why can't I sprint with my horse in town? It's like the previously where they made it where you could blast through the barricades with your horse. They looked at things that were making people quit the game. And they basically said, we've got to remove the things that are pissing people off about the game.
And this is something that like I don't know why a lot of developers do this, is that they kind of hold on to ideas in games because like this is the problem. And I think it's like the big difference between like good developers and bad developers is that a good developer can add complexity and you know, like kind of add in hurdles to a game that make the game more exciting. But a bad developer will just add in hurdles to the game, hoping that that will make the game more exciting. And I think that Diablo 4 has a lot of those like kind of mandatory hurdles that don't really add any gameplay or anything like that to the game. And I think that, like, you know, you look at Classic WoW, for example, and like doing your class quests in Classic WoW and how that adds value. That's interesting, you know? But with Diablo 4, I think that there was a huge fight for a long time about, like, why do we have to do something that nobody wants to do? Whether it was renown, whether it was, like, farming out the Paragon glyph levels, whether it was, I'm trying to think, like, what are some of the other, like, dumb things that were in the game? The way the Uber Uniques originally were, it was, like, always things that were silly. Yeah, generator spenders, why quit the dog shit game? The fact that, that Diablo isn't even in the game. Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I think it's silly that, like, every class is designed that way, but good design is removing 80% of the complexity while only losing 20% of the depth. Yeah, exactly.
Minimum, before we make the game have tons and tons and tons of content, we at least have to make the game stop actively making people want to quit. And that's really what the season feels like. They went through, they found the moments.
Yeah, I don't know why so many game devs do this. They have like these pointlessly annoying things in games that just make the game worse and don't add anything into it. So like, I'm very, very glad about that. I just wish they would have listened earlier, because I feel like a lot of people have kind of already made up their mind about Diablo 4. And now, like, people already have that sour taste in their mouth from Diablo, and they've already decided that D4 bad. So they're not even willing to come back until probably the new expansion. And then I worry about the new expansion, because what if they add more of this stuff into the new expansion, and then they don't listen until Season 4 of the expansion? That's the way I'm thinking about it.
Retention, where players were dipping down in boredom, and they gutted those moments and squished them together. Okay, then they threw it on the ass end of it with the pits, etc., and then jacked it up to give you something to do at the end of the game. Then they looked at things that were pissing people off in terms of annoyance, like the codex or inventory space, or the affix is not making a lot of sense, and they think this is making people quit too. In my opinion, this is Season 4 audience retention reborn, because they looked at everything that was making people quit and making people mad, and they addressed those things. I'm not going to pretend that the game has, like, the most in-game content or anything out of any ARPG, but it's fun.
It's the best season that Diablo 4 has ever had. It's the best one. And I think they've improved the game in a lot of ways that are tangible and obvious. Does that mean that the game is good? I think that for a lot of more casual players, Diablo 4 is indeed good.
To play now is the difference. Like, now you can log on and actually slay some monsters and have a pretty decent time. When you're at the end of the day, you don't feel like the game was actively trying to make you not enjoy it. You felt like you just played a game. So it's actually fun now. I don't think you're going to get, like, months and months. Like, I don't think you're going to play Season 4 all the way to Season 5 comes out.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think that. But I do think while you choose to play it until you do finally get bored, you're probably going to have a pretty decent time at it, at least. So for me, it's the best season, because
I don't think that the goal should be to keep people playing for the entire season. I think the goal should be to get players to do as much content as they want to. Because, like, really, there's a lot of people that, like, they don't want to do that. That's not, like, keep them. Yeah, if you can get people in a season for 2 weeks, like, for example, every single PoE season, I have never played an entire PoE season. I usually stop, like, 1/3 of the way through the season, or maybe, like, 3 or 4 weeks into the season. And then that's it. I stop playing. And I have a great time. I said, this was super fucking fun. This was awesome. I finished my character. And now it's ready, you know, I'm ready to do something else. That's normal. Like, people shouldn't expect a seasonal game to be a forever game.
Remove stuff that I just didn't like about the game. And I feel a lot of people didn't like about the game. It kind of skipped straight to the dessert. Here's your levels. Here's your next world tier. We added some greater rifts for you. We understand you guys like just blasting through at Diablo 3. We missed the mark with some of the stuff in Diablo 4. We're just going to remove it, speed everything up, and at least that will give you some more dopamine, at least quicker. Here's some greater affixes with a star next to it so you can get hype about some of the item drops. Here's some quality of life. Here's a horse in town that you can go fast, go have fun with it. I know there's no, like, major seasonal mechanic.
Yeah, they basically gave people the stuff that they have been asking for the whole time. Nothing about Season 4 screams super cool, though. Just okay and definitely fixed, but not really cool. Yeah, I feel like Season 4 could be like how Dragonflight was for WoW, where like they needed to do Dragonflight to like reorient the game in a good direction. And I think that's basically what Season 4 is doing for Diablo 4. It's more of like a foundational season rather than like a bunch of new experiences and new content. It's a refresher, yeah.
I know the Uber bosses are the same bosses reskinned with one new boss. I don't care. At this point, it's fine. This basically is, in my opinion, the game is caught up to where it basically everyone wanted it to be on release. It's now a decent game to log into. I can play it for a couple weeks. I don't need Diablo 4 to last me all the way until Season 5.
Yeah.
I can play this.
It's unhealthy to expect that.
RPG that you bounce between has their league, and I can enjoy my time. And then when I go to play something else, I can be like, yeah, that was a decent playthrough. And I can go to something else. And I don't have to like, oh, no, it's Season 5. You know, is it going to be like at least the core game is functional, the core game is enjoyable.
That's the way I felt about Season 2. Is I only played Season 2 for maybe a week, probably like 6 days even. Like I hit 100, I killed Duriel, and I was like, cool. And then I killed Uber Lilith, and I was like, all right, I did it. Okay, well, I'm going to go play something else. That was fun. And then I just don't play again. Yeah, and that was fine. And like I'm not mad about that. Like, that was good. I played the game for 5 days. It was awesome.
Way more than it was to get to level 100 before, and now they can build upon it. I think Season 4 is probably the best that Diablo 4's state has been in yet so far. At least that's my opinion. So I'm pretty positive about this season. I was very negative about Season 3. I didn't even complete it. Didn't have a very good time.
Yeah.
Season 4, I'm having probably the best time I've had since Season 2, and I would say it's probably the most enjoyable experience I've had in Diablo 4 since launch. At least that's how I feel about it. Current state, I'll play the Ubers. We'll see what the end game's like. We'll do a full, longer review of it. But for this state, for an early impression, it's actually quite fun. If you're curious whether or not you were going to want to relog in, if you haven't logged in since like Season 1 or something, or you got bored on launch or something like that, dip your head in, give it a shot, give it a few hours, see what you think. You'll blast through.
This is my advice. Is Diablo 4 on Game Pass? I think it is now, right? I'm not sure. Yeah, it's on Game Pass, or you can buy it on Steam. Here's my genuine advice. Buy Diablo 4 on Steam, and if you're not having fun an hour and a half into the game, refund it. Refund the game. Because if I guarantee you, like, it's not going to get any better. Like, the beginning experience is going to be good, and if you don't think it's good, if you're not enjoying it, then just instantly refund the game, and you are done. It's free trial. Yeah, that's bad advice. No, it's not. I think that Diablo 4, the new player experience campaign, is probably some of its best content. So if you aren't already having your mind made up by seeing end-game footage, if you're not already having your mind made up by seeing, the trailers or anything like that, then buy it, and then play it, and then refund it. Because I think that if you're not going to have fun within that first hour to hour and a half, you're never going to have fun. For me, Diablo 4 was fun immediately. Like, whenever the beta first came out, it was immediately fun, instantly enjoyable. So it was like, yeah, this is great. This is awesome. So, same now, and now I hate it. Yeah, exactly. And so, it's on Steam? Yeah, it's on Steam. That's what I mean. I think you're wrong here. Well, everybody is going to be different, but I'm talking about my experience, and this is my best advice based off of my experience. If you think that you're different, then maybe do something different. But this is the way I would do it. So, yeah.
Quicker than you were before, and so far I'm enjoying it.
There it is. I think that's pretty fair. I'll link you guys the video. Make sure to give it a like. I do want to look. Actually, you know what I want to see? I want to see what my viewers thought about the new season. There's the video. Give it a like. Does that apply to WoW? Not necessarily, no. I think Diablo is a lot different than WoW in that circumstance. Okay, so here we go. So this is a 5-hour video that we released, I guess, yesterday for Diablo 4 Loot Reborn. Here we go. Let's read the comments of how people responded to the new season on my channel. I still can't get over the fact that enemies scale with your power. I hate this lazy approach to balancing so much. It completely ruins the fun of the game for me. They'll get it this time. Don't let the 7 letdowns get you down. When you're younger, you're a barbarian. When older, a necromancer. The most resilient of customers. Looking for the 5th last chance. Blizzard needs to learn the concept of last chance works, or I guess we have to. Weren't there people complaining that the minions are randomly getting one-shot? Now that they don't die immediately, you're able to cast spells other than healing. People still complain that the game is too easy. The core problem about Diablo 4 was that it was boring. I don't think Blizzard will fix it anytime soon without turning Diablo 4 into an expanded season of Diablo 3. Quit halfway through Season 2. I'm actually enjoying this season. A lot of good changes. Now, game is good. 2 months later, D4 bad. People say it's a bad game, and I have 500 hours into it. It's finally good again. Famous last words.